Hello, and welcome to the latest in the Recipients series. Today, I'm speaking with the fabulous Aaron Cotton. Aaron is the recipient of the 2024 Innovation Award in the National Awards for Disability Leadership. Congratulations, Aaron.
Thank you.
I'll tell you a bit about Aaron. Aaron has transformed disability housing. I haven't started the caption, so I'll just do that now. Okay, good on me. And I'll do that in the middle of everything. Okay.
Well, good.
Aaron has transformed disability housing by developing a platform that empowers NDIS participants to choose their housemates and providers, addressing the lack of autonomy in supported independent living. His innovation promotes independence, inclusivity, and safety, significantly improving housing outcomes for people with disabilities across diverse needs and backgrounds. The Innovation Award is for somebody who has achieved outcomes to the status of disabled people by working outside the box, developing new systems, technology, or tools. So I reckon that's what Aaron's been up to, eh? Okay. So Aaron, welcome. How did you get into this sort of work? What drove you to this?
Look, to be honest, I started out in a very different field. I was a pharmacist many moons ago, about 8 years ago now. But through that and through kind of our collective experience when we were in the real estate as well, we did that as a bit of a side project, and we ended up meeting with a few friends. One was a pharmacist that I worked with. He talked about support independent living and the NDIS and people with disabilities, and we kind of sat on the back burner after we spoke about it. It sounded interesting, but then we had my partner and co-founder Amy. She had started her social work degree, and through her social work experience and placement, she visited civil homes and other disability accommodations, and just saw how colourful, different, bad. We'll just use the right words. Bad it can be. And she just said, "Look, Aaron, you need to see these kinds of things. It's not fair. Why, being subject to this kind of stuff just because you have a disability is not okay." And we decided that then and there that we would go back to our friend. We spoke more about sills, and we started our own sill provision in North Brisbane. And 5 years later now, we've got quite a few homes. We support 10 different high intensity participants. And that journey was, it's been an interesting one, that's for sure, learning from going from a pharmacy kind of background into an NDIS space, going from pharmacy, which is very black and white, to disability, which is incredibly grey, which is an interesting transition. But through that journey, learned more about myself as well, and come to terms with the fact that I'm a disabled person myself, being diagnosed later in life. Yeah, and the way that we did SIL was just very different in comparison to the way it's currently done. We tried doing it the traditional way, I guess you could say, and it didn't really work for us. So we're like, well, people really should be choosing for themselves. So let's give that a go. We'll get people to meet each other, decide if they want to live with each other first before we invested in a house or before we took on a rental or something along those lines. And it's just worked wonders for us. And Marco Polo is basically the extension of that.
Fantastic. How important do you think it is to have disabled people actually in there doing this work? You know, the
Oh,
the
yeah.
the disability accommodation, I mean, it's one of the oldest forms of disability support. We've had centuries of these appalling institutions, asylums,
Asylums, yeah.
and asylums. And any of us who've ever worked in that space know that there's not a lot of choice that goes on. How important do you think it is for disabled people to be in there as part of the people running the show, making the decisions, designing it, as you've been doing?
Yeah, look, it's vital really, because you can, a thing that we've learned as well is that we always make assumptions that we know best, that our decision making is better. When I identified as a neurotypical person, um, that that we know better and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, well, it's not the truth at all. Like, people know themselves better, and having people with a disability to lead that kind of stuff, to have that lived experience and go, you know, people choosing one another is basically what it's all about. And you can't get past this whole idea of choice and control seems to be this nice to have rather than the necessary, like it should be the status quo. It's just like, you need to have that ability to choose. Like, everyone else gets that opportunity, and why shouldn't people with disability? And to be able to facilitate that choice and control for people with disability, you need people with disability building these structures, because if you don't, you'll build the platform in a non-disabled way, in a non-accessible way, and then people that want to exercise their choice and control really just can't, because it's not built for them. So it's absolutely vital that you have people with disabilities leading these sorts of platforms, and not just leaving it up to um, the normal the normal culprits to build things that don't end up getting used, because it's just done the same way. If you do the same thing 100 times, you'll get the same result every time. So if you have people with disability, which is quite new, to be facilitating and building these things, you'll get different outcomes.
Why an app? Like you come from real estate, you do houses, you pull people together, you talk about having meetings that people get to see each other beforehand. Um, why an app? What's that about?
So the app, I think, was just kind of the next logical step to move from a non-technical base. Like, technology is improving, like, as you know, as we progress in time, we've got AI and all sorts of things now. So I think for us to basically use an app that, I'm trying to think the best way to describe this. I think the way that things happen in the housing industry now is that people will sit on multiple wait lists. So you'll sit with a provider and go, yeah, I like that provider. I'll sit on this wait list, and maybe they'll get to me in a month. Maybe they'll get to me in 3 months, and then I'll be put into a house that they see fit. So the whole idea around building the app was that we've got a decentralized, basically, wait list, but you're in control of who you match with, who you pick as the provider, instead of sitting on multiple wait lists disconnected from other people who could actually be your perfect housemate, but you haven't reached out to the provider that they're sitting with, or they're not aware of that provider that you want to go with. So the whole idea is to bring technology across, make sure that there is no client capture, there's no bias that comes from it. It's literally participants jump on with help of stakeholders if need be, and to find one another and really empower that decision. Because if you don't know the choices that are out there, how are you going to make a really good and informed decision?
Mm. 21st century, I guess,
Yeah.
it's all of that. Yeah, people meet online. I mean, we meet online. Hello. It's that, isn't it? What's the sort of current work that you're doing?
To be honest, at this point in time, because we've built the app, it does work. But like all technology platforms, they're always a bit, ugly when they start. So there's always improvements that need to occur. So we're working on that in the back end, as all platforms generally do. There's always things to fix. But at this point in time, it's really around awareness, and letting people know that we exist. So a lot of people don't know that we're around. We're trying very hard. I'm basically using my hyper focus now to learn completely about marketing and become a little TikTok influencer type thing. Yeah, basically just to let people know that we're out there, and trying to do things in a way it doesn't sit with what currently is in the market. So disability housing is always so serious. It's always so, oh, it's either that or they've got this savior complex about them. So it's like, oh, we're here to do this and we're here to do that for you. And it's just like, we're making things a little bit more fun. We're empowering you. We're going to give you the tools. I'm not here to rescue you. At this point in time, if you have, take the initiative to help yourself, and I'll give you the tools to do that. And that's what it's all built around. I was asked a long time ago. It's just like, Aaron, your version of helping people doesn't like seem to be the same as everyone else. So I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, would you just donate a whole bunch of money so that people could have somewhere to stay? And I'm just like, well, no. And she goes, I'm like, I would help to give to educate, to give skills so that they can help themselves. That's my version of charity or helping people around building capacity. And it's just so happened that this is what's been needed in the disability space. It's none of this 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 savior complex, this come rescue me type thing. It's here are the tools. We know you've got capacity to do it yourselves, and we've built in things so that if people don't have capacity to use the platform, at least someone that's supporting them can.
It's really interesting as I'm listening to you. I'm having this massive flashback to last year's the 2023 recipient of the Innovation Award, the outstanding Robert King. And Rob
Yeah,
was getting out of the appalling Stockton institution near Newcastle, this massive institution, one of the last of the massive institutions in Australia. And after something like 50 or 60 years of living in this appalling institution, he finally got out and designed his own living arrangements and his own supports that go round it, so that he is able to live independently and run his own life for the first time in his existence, which is just an astonishing story. And highly recommend everybody check out the podcast from Rob for last year's Innovation Award. But the way you're talking about, people actually, you know, skill building, so people are actually doing their own space, putting together their own living arrangements, actually designing their own lives. And it's the deinstitutionalizing of disability housing. Is that really what we're talking about here?
it is. Yeah, it's utilizing things because you see in the media and stuff around, SILs and group homes have obviously got quite a negative rap. And the thing is that I don't wholly agree with that. Like I know that institutions are, they're often terrible places. But the idea that I think the core problem really is that there's never really actually any choice. Because if you go, look, you've actually got a choice of independent living, or you can live with some housemates. And if you're only ever given one choice, or not even given a choice, and go, you are living with a group of other people, what's the immediate thing that you want? You want your independence. You want to live alone because you've been told you can't. It's pretty, classic human nature. So I think the way that we're building this is that we are just creating that diversified choice. Like we accommodate people with ILO or just with funding that do want to live by themselves. They can just independently find a provider. But what we're seeing through the platform is there's people with ILO funding because they're like, I want to live alone because they've been told that they can't their entire lives. They live out by themselves and like, actually, I really want a housemate because I'm pretty lonely. And yeah, I think that just kind of goes to the core of what the actual issue is. I don't think it's the institution, or the institutions are a problem, but having housemates and having, sharing with one or two other people, I don't think is the problem. I think it's the lack of choice is really the problem.
Mm. What are the kinds of barriers or roadblocks that you've come up against as you've headed into this work?
Look, going from I'm pretty I'm getting used to the idea of just jumping ship into something completely different all the time. So going from violence to disability, and now I have to consider myself a tech entrepreneur because I'm now doing a tech thing. So it's very different. And I guess the barriers that come from like my own neurodivergence, like I can pump out a week's worth of work in a day, but then I'm done for 3 days. Like I have to reset and recharge for 3 days. And keeping that consistency for everyone to make sure customer service and all that sort of stuff comes through, that's definitely a barrier. But one of the biggest barriers we're actually seeing is just the lack of government. Like we've had no real government adoption or engagement or anything like that. Because we've reached out and said, look, we're helping to fix, NDIS problems. We align with the commission report. We align with the NDIS review. Check us out type thing. And what was great about this award is that we've now been recognised by our peers, which is fantastic, and I can't actually say yet, but we've been recognised by quite a prominent university. We're going through their accelerator program now. Not allowed to announce it yet, but I think in the next couple of days I'll be allowed to say something. Um, but yeah, it's really nice. But the problem is that we're being recognised by our peers. We've been recognised by the wider Australian public and the business community, but the NDIS and the the people that can make a real difference to get this incorporated have just not really bothered. So that's been a pretty big challenge and a little bit disappointing, to be honest. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, we'll keep pushing forward.
As a fellow disability entrepreneur, have you found that it's that disability thing that's sometimes that barrier? If we were non-disabled folk, suddenly I'm getting notifications on my laptop and I don't know why, so let's just ignore them.
Good.
If we were non-disabled folk doing exactly the same work, coming from, the big end of town, or, some sort of corporate background, and we were well known in certain business networks, that the government would be jumping on the work that we're doing, and it would be talked about publicly and there'd be all sorts of media. But because we're disabled people, somehow it's just a bit not. Is there something in that you've picked up, or am I just getting a bit paranoid?
No, I agree with that. There's something that kind of sits there where it's like, it feels like there's this facade. It's that nice to have, like I was saying before, it's like choice and control. Like it's nice to have, but in reality, we're not going to go that direction. So it's the same thing when it comes to like disabled entrepreneurs, co-design and things like that. I understand that they are getting better, but at the end of the day, it seems to be that the government and these ancient organizations, 100-year plus, seem to go, yeah, look, it'd be awesome to have someone with a disability to start something, to pioneer something. Let's talk about it. Yeah, this is great, but then it never gets past that next step, never gets to implementation. And yeah, I just think there's this entrenched sense of this is the way we've always done things, so let's continue down this path because, well, we've made it work for us. But yeah, I think true social change is such a difficult thing to push forward. But it's been successful in the past, and I came to the oration with I've forgotten his name now, but the story around the Monga man and the one-footed Monga man, and it was excellent. Like it was such a truly, it was just quite inspirational that at that point to hear about the struggles of disabled people and to finally go, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to wait for you to let me. I'm going to go do it. And we've seen that through some quite pivotal things in history. So there's suffrage movement and all that sort of stuff, and Malcolm X, all that sort of stuff. And there's these things that they don't let people hold them back. And I feel like we're in that space now. We're getting to that point where people are starting to get interested in disability, and it's going to get to a point where we're going to build enough momentum that real social change is actually going to occur. And I'm really excited to be a part of that, even if it is just a small piece.
Yes, and um, Aaron there is referring to the Disability Leadership Oration, which featured Scott Avery in
Yes.
2024, and of course is available on ABC podcasts through your ABC app. So yeah, check it out. And Scott did talk about the one-legged Mungo man. So this guy going hunting. It's part of the local mob out at Lake Mungo, and there's one leg. He went hunting. He decided he was going to be part of it, and off he went. It's a terrific story, and we highly recommend it. Yes, it made a big impact, and it's interesting, isn't it? Change is coming, but it's never fast enough for us, Aaron. I think that's
Yeah.
the issue. So how will receiving this award change your work? And you've talked about also being accepted into an accelerator program. We can't wait for the details. But how will that kind of recognition, the innovation award and getting accepted into an accelerator program, some of these are really hard to get into, and you know, is that the sort of thing that might shift those attitudes? How else might it actually change the not just the work you're trying to do, but the change you're trying to make.
Yeah, look, I think as soon as there is recognition around something, and when you do have, when you do have peer recognition, and when you do start getting these accelerator programs, and I think they kind of tend to snowball after a while because in the first instance, people are like, well, who are you? What are you really about? And when you actually start to see these things like awards and going through this sort of stuff, it builds momentum because people go, oh, these people have recognized them. So maybe they're worth actually looking into a bit more. And honestly, I think one of the reasons we got into the accelerator program is the interview was only last week, I think the final interview. And I said, oh, I won an award for innovation. And the board just said, why didn't you start with that when we started the interview?
Oh,
And I'm just like, well, I don't know what you want to hear from me, but I just thought I'd pop that in there. And they're like, no, that's really important, like to see that, you are being recognized by peers and things like that. And it's just, yeah, I think that yeah, the recognition through that sort of stuff. Honestly, the day that it was announced on International Disability Day, it was I had the phones were ringing a lot because they're like, "Oh, I heard you on Triple J." I'm like, "Was it on Triple J?" I'm like, "Was I on Triple J?" And my dad rings me. He pulls up because he's a bus driver in Logan, and he pulls over and he's just like, Aaron, it's like, you won an award. And I'm like, yeah, I did win an award. I hadn't told you yet. And he's like, yeah, it was on the radio. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I had no idea. And yeah, it was quite amazing because even just from those one or two little spots, the number of people that were actually receptive to going, oh, there's something different out there, finally. And that's honestly the reception that we usually get is, oh, sorry, little ear plug fell out.
we're both having
Um,
tech fun today.
I know. But yeah, like the we speak to coordinators, participants, and families and things that they go, why hasn't this existed before? And I think that's kind of the exciting, but also a little bit sad part around this is that the fact that something that should have existed 10, 20 years ago when Flatmates came out and realestate.com came out is only just being brought out today, which is sad, but it's also exciting that it's finally here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next?
Oh,
Where are you heading now? Apart from, oh my goodness, what a year. Where are you heading now?
I think it's really social change is kind of the big thing that we see at the moment, and it's really challenging that status quo of people making decisions for people with disability. And you'll see a lot of what we're trying to do through my having to become an influencer now. It's funny when you become an entrepreneur, you have to also become a social media influencer and talk about your business and the problem you're trying to solve. But yeah, that's basically what we're looking at is trying to really drive that social change and getting people to understand that people with disabilities have the capacity to choose who they want to live with. They just haven't had the tools in the past. And I think I'm excited to see where this goes with this accelerator program, getting some investment so that we can make things bigger and better and more specific and making it more accessible because it's something we still need to work on as well. Even though we've come from that space, it's just you can always make things better. But yeah, we've been honestly the next 5-10 years are going to be very interesting because we've already had people from aged care, from child safety approach us and say, hey, look, we're facing a very similar problem. Do you think that you could go into this area? And then, yeah, we've looked into like international markets and things as well. There's the UK and the US, which are facing similar sort of similar sort of problems. And it's just yeah, I'm really glad to be in this unique position where social change and social betterment is actually going to be something that is economically viable for the other side of the equation as well. Like it's such a unique position to be in that yeah, often you see social change is going to cost a lot. And people go, oh, well, it's going to cost too much money. The bean counters like, no, we can't do that. Yeah, we want to do better, but we can't afford it. Whereas what we're building and what we have built is that the fact that this model actually makes economic sense as well as social change sense. I can't wait to see what happens in the next couple of years. I think it's going to be very exciting.
That is incredibly exciting. And I was thinking that earlier, actually, as you were talking about developing this, we've also got an aged care sort of crisis going on, and the Royal Commission into aged care. And of course, there are older people with disability, and many of those people were in fact institutionalized as young people, and they're not going to go back there.
Correct. Yeah.
So, you know, creating our own housing choices, being able to put together our own ways of living so that we're not necessarily on our own, that we're actually pooling our resources, but we're doing it in a way that's driven by us and designed by us. There's incredible potential, I think, for the wider community to understand um, what group living can look like for those people who aren't living in or choosing to live in family groups.
Yeah.
The world is shifting. It's quite interesting, isn't it? So
I
much
think, yeah,
potential.
seeing outside of those spaces as well is like, I think the world in general is shifting to that, back to that, or in the Western world anyway, they still do it in Asia, a lot of Asian countries where you have multiple family members, multiple generations living together. Whereas if you don't have the ability to do that, you don't get the benefits in the Western world of having the benefits of group living. You can raise a child with, this person and this person, which you've actively chosen those people to live with. And I think that people, non-disabled people and people outside of age and child safety, we're almost starting to see, because of the way the economy is at the moment, is shared living is becoming more popular. It's becoming a more like viable option for everyone. So I think this is it's going to be a bit of a natural transition. I think it's moving back into like group living if you need to economically. But yeah, we're a few steps behind in the disability space. We haven't had that opportunity to live by ourselves yet. So let's work on that, and then we'll see if we can transition into a group living thing after that. But as long as the real premise around all of it is just that choice: is can I live independently? Do I want to live with a group? But it's up to that person what they want to do.
Yeah, and it's absolutely straight down the barrel of the rights-based approach to disability, which we often throw out the window almost immediately. Things start to get tough or so-called expensive. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
We're just about out of time, Aaron, but we always finish on a big final question, which is, who is a leader you admire and why?
Oh, look, there'd be quite a few, and it's quite funny because I think a few of the leaders that I do admire are both loved and hated in different parts. So there's like there's John D. Rockefeller, which I've learned a few things, did a lot of study around him, like Travis Kalanick through Uber. Um, Elon Musk, I think, is a given. He's a very good businessman, but honestly, at the same time, makes some appalling decisions. But I think the person that probably sticks out the most to me is actually an Australian man. He passed away recently, quite sadly, and it's kind of rocked the entrepreneurial community in Australia, to be honest. His name's Kerwin Ray. And yeah, look, honestly, I think I have a lot to thank that man. He was a man with a disability himself. Um, often, often hid it, I think. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but kind of he was quite a spiritual man as well, and it came to light a lot more in his like later years of his like the way he was teaching through business and stuff as well. Honestly, I have a lot to thank. Yeah, a lot of what I do now I have to thank that man for, because his teachings and the things that he talked about got me out of a traditional 9 to 5 type working environment, going, you can make social change, you can do this through business, and it can be, beneficial for you and for everyone around you. So yeah, honestly, Kerwin Ray is, yeah, if you're not familiar with him, would 100% recommend looking at what he does, because it's amazing.
Fantastic. I will look him up. Thank you. Oh, Aaron Cotton, congratulations once again on receiving the Innovation Award in the 2024 National Awards for Disability Leadership. And thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Christina.